The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors, or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter. Rockheads, sit your seat service down and listen up. It's time for another stellar episode of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Rory Blythe. This is Jeff Maciolik here to announce show number 72 with Clemens Vasters, recorded live Thursday, July 15th. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VB.NET and ASP.NET classes remotely. Online at www.franklins.net. And by Data Dynamics, makers of ActiveReports.net. Simple, powerful, and cost-effective reporting for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.datadynamics.com. And by Dundas Chart, advanced technology, advanced results. Online at www.dundaschart.com. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, Microsoft Technologies in-depth for IT managers and developers. Online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the man who woke up this morning with one heck of a katzenjammer, Carl Franklin.
Gotta get enough points to finally land me a place in the all-night game.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff, and you're listening to .NET Rocks. I'm Carl, and my co-host out there in Portland, Oregon tonight, Rory Blythe. Rory, my friend, how are you?
You know, I'm okay.
Cool. How's Portland tonight?
Portland is absolutely gorgeous today. I think I've probably said that for the past few shows, but it's been so completely beautiful. I've had a nice relaxing day, did a little bit of writing, took a nap on the bed with the Chihuahua, and just had a good day. And things are good.
Awesome. So what have you been doing? I know that you've been sort of in between jobs and experimenting with drugs and I don't mean hard drugs. I mean, antidepressants and stuff. And how's all that going? You coming out
it's
of
going
Alice,
pretty well.
Coming out of Wonderland?
I kind of, yeah. I only hyperventilated 4 times this week, so I'm pretty happy about that. And no, the truth is, when I first started taking them, I was freaking out all the time, and I was developing like new phobias by the minute that would come and go,
Reminds me of
they would
college.
not last for more than 5 minutes. Yeah, kind of, I guess. You know what, though? Yeah, college typically causes some sort of generalized anxiety disorder. But when I was starting antidepressants, I would just out of nowhere just suddenly think, oh, my God, 3:38 a.m. Oh, my God, it's 3:38 a.m. and then it'd go away. And that was really, really weird. And my doctor had me taking tranquilizers, like Valium, kind of around the clock. And that had me totally foggy and nasty. And now I'm down to just 1 a day. And I'm really happy about that. And I'm starting to get the positive benefits, like increased energy, increased just like better mood. I'm feeling pretty good. Even and it helps out with the OCD. Someday I might be able to actually shake some of your dirty feces covered hands.
Oh,
people,
God.
without having to worry about it. My dog peed on me yesterday, and I wasn't even worried about it. He peed on my shirt, and I spent the rest of the afternoon wearing that shirt just to prove to myself that I could. No, I walked around with dog urine on my shirt.
OCD. I would have changed my shirt. That's pretty bad.
Well,
I mean, it's good for you. I mean, it's an improvement, I guess. But
now that you phrase it that way,
kind of weird to think about it like an improvement.
Hey, did you hear about Roy? He wore his dog's peed shirt on all day. All right, good going, Roy.
Well, look, I was happy about being able to wear my dog's pee shirt around yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, and you should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Aside from that, I got a paper cut this week, and that's been my life.
Cool.
So that's what's happening.
Been writing some good stuff.
What's
on the
up
blog.
with you? What's new with you?
Oh,
yeah. I've been getting back into writing.
Yeah, you want to say something about that?
No.
Okay, just go read the blog, I guess, is what we should say.
Yeah.
Good stuff up there, and I'm enjoying it. What's up with me? Well, I've been making movies this week, working on .NET Rocks, the movie, and that's a lot of fun. It's finally coming together into some sort of coherent presentation. You know, what's weird about making movies is you just work with raw footage, and it's all this disconnected stuff, and you put it together in Premiere, and you start sliding things around and fading in and out, and you actually start and begin to tell a story with all these little parts, but you have to know what all the little parts are. And it's kind of like programming, except that it's totally componentized. Like, you don't write anything. You just new up a component and call it, and then it overlaps into another call, and that's it. I mean, you don't write anything. You just you're like the manager. You're like the hands-on manager. You can just move things around in time. Well, anyway, it's really, really fun, and we have not only footage of the show that we recorded. We recorded a show where we had a camera on me, camera on you, and a camera on Richard. It was the toy show, the Geeking Out with Richard Campbell. So we have that, but we also have the footage from Tech Ed, where we had some conversations with people down there, and just having some fun down in San Diego, and some music and some fun stuff, and maybe even some surprises. So what we're probably going to end up with is a DVD. It's going to be too big to download. It's going to be a 2-hour movie, and we will either make it free if a sponsor can make that happen, or it'll be a nominal charge, a PayPal kind of thing, where you just, whatever. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and man, it's coming out great. Yeah, and so that's been my week. I've been almost doing almost now. I actually wrote a few articles this week, but that has been the major part of what I've been doing, is editing the video. We have a couple of pieces of mail. One of them just came through the website, and it's a really, really nice letter. So I'm going to read this. It's from Jonah Magnuson. The company is No Thanks. I Like Being Alone. And he's from Gig Harbor, Washington. He says, I give up. I discovered DNR sometime late last year, but didn't really start listening to the shows until February of this year. For several months, I was driving across the state of Washington every week, almost 4 hours each way. I spent a good part of that time listening to old DNR shows. Life was good when the shows were only an hour long and 2 weeks apart. I was cranking through 6 shows a week. But the longer, regular format is awesome. It just slowed me down a little. I almost caught up. As I type this, I'm listening to show 67 with John Alexander and Barry Gervin. I had hoped to get through all the shows in order, but I give up. I'll be happily listening to your live show tonight and catching up on the last few episodes next week. I loved listening to every show, even the bar episode with Mark that you said didn't go over too well. Yeah, it was a little journey through space and time, wasn't it? I have a confession to make, though. Earlier this year, when I started downloading the shows in force, Rory's picture was on the website, but I didn't notice his name. For the longest time, I was trying to reconcile Mark Dunn's voice and persona with Rory's picture. It just didn't make sense, but I accepted it. When I finally figured out Mark Bang equals Rory, all was right in the universe again. I'm looking forward to the show. Keep up the great work. Sincerely, Jonah. Jonah, send us an email, and we will get you a mug with our mugs on it. And there you go. Thanks, Jonah. I also have a piece of mail from Ross M. That's all I know. It says, Carl, my name is Ross Michaels. Oh, there you go. Ross M. I'll do that again, okay? We also have a piece of email here from Ross Michaels. He says, Carl, my name is Ross Michaels, and I'm a computer scientist and project manager at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I've recently stumbled across .NET Rocks, so if I'm suggesting something that you've already covered, I apologize in advance. He's not. This isn't something we have covered, so it's good. I'm working my way I'm slowly working my way through all your shows from the beginning. I'm only on about show 9 right now. I had an idea for a .NET Rock show that I'd like to share with you. I've noticed that when it comes to hardware, most vendors are quite behind the times with respect to .NET. I deal with a lot of camera control software, for example, from Olympus or Oki, and most of the vendors seem to be stuck in a VB6 or VC, Visual C++ 6 world. Given that you can't even easily buy Visual Studio 6 anymore, I thought it would be a service to both vendors and developers to have a show focusing on the advantages and disadvantages of evolving device drivers to .NET, or at the very least ways to make drivers more .NET and PNBOK friendly. I know that in all the software that we've received from the biometrics industry, this is a lot. There hasn't been a single .NET-based library delivered to us. Anyway, that's my idea in a nutshell. You've got a great show. It makes my commute something I look forward to. Ross, thank you. And just to clarify, it would pretty much be impossible to write drivers in .NET. You wouldn't want to do that. But what I think you're talking about is just accessible APIs, which can definitely be made in .NET. And you're right. People aren't getting on the ball. Actually, that's not entirely true. Maybe just true in your area, but I do know of lots of, not lots of, but a few devices that have .NET accessible APIs. But you're right, we need to have more of those. So maybe that's something Richard the Toy Boy can stick in his hat for future reference. We got another one from Greg Martin, who says, should be a great show this week. Looking forward to it. I was reading this post on Clemens Vasters' blog, and regarding object-oriented design and of the business tier. Can you get Rocky Lotka on the phone to debate this with him? That would be some discussion, I think. Well, we couldn't, sorry, but we could definitely take that offline. He says, I haven't caught last week's show yet, but the Speakers Lounge show was great. I was interested in the discussion on securing machines, as I've been dealing with an issue lately where I can't access IIS from VS without shutting down my firewall, which is Zone Alarm. It's not such an issue for my machine as it only connects with dial-up, so I can make sure I'm offline before I shut the firewall down, but this turns out to be a known issue with Zone Alarm version 5, which their website says will be fixed either this month or next month. It would be great for you to do a show on a discussion about how people are or should be securing and configuring their development machines, as I seem to waste a bunch of time doing shit like this when I could be churning out crappy code. I don't know if the email drought lifted in last week's show, but here's a suggestion. Stop giving away techie crap, get sponsored by a distillery, and start giving away bottles of scotch. That's an idea. I'd much rather have a bottle of 10-year-old Lefroy than an Xbox game any day. Rock on, guys, Greg. Well, that's not a bad idea, but hey, if you can sign him up, more power to you, but I don't think I'd have any luck doing that. And finally, Rory, Chris Waters sent me an email on Monday that said, I'm still about a year behind in listening to .NET Rocks, but making good progress. I'm a diehard VBer. Do you still favor VBNet over C#? And did you see this latest gibberish? And he sent me to a link which started a firestorm on my blog. I was reading this link, which was why convert from VBNet to C#? Why should you jump the fence from Visual Basic.NET and embrace C# in all its glory? And while I have nothing particularly wrong with people who say, this is why I like C# or this is why I like VBNet, this was like this site was on a mission to convert VB programmers for the wrong reasons. And I just got so mad at seeing this misinformation that I went on a rant on my blog, and a whole bunch of people jumped in there, and of course it got blown way out of proportion like everything else does, and everybody had to add their 2 cents, but it was kind of made my week go a little bit smoother. And now it's time for a segment that we like to do in the first part of the show called the News of the Week with Rory Blythe.
Now obey.
Got some news for us, man?
I have a little bit. It was actually a pretty slow news week. That's why earlier on in the show I mentioned the paper cut, my dog peeing on me, because those were like the biggest things that happened this week.
Oh.
But a couple of things are going on, and I only found two things that I was really genuinely interested by. I mean, there's a lot of conversation out there right now. Obviously, like Steve Ballmer talking about the Xbox taking on Sony in the next generation of consoles is getting a lot of play for some reason. I don't think it's that fascinating.
No, not
it doesn't really concern us. I've been seeing a lot about that, but what's really interesting to me right now is all the mono stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And so there's a pretty good interview on CNET right now on news.com.com titled More Than an Open Source Curiosity, and it's with Miguel. And they just kind of go through and they're talking about mono, and they're talking about, some of the goals, some of the aims, some of the challenges, some of what's going on, and, that mono's actually been released, what's going on. It's really a very worthwhile interview. In fact, there's so little news this week that I'm almost willing to read the 3-mile long URL that points to this article, but really you'd be better off just going to...
Yeah, we'll put a link to it on the website. So
we'll put it up because it's freakishly long. And then Ars Technica, which is this pretty popular site, has a guide, a sort of introductory guide to mono as a multi-platform, development tool. And I think it's pretty interesting. Even if you're never going to do it, it's still interesting to read about how it is that people are going to be developing desktop applications with mono for other operating systems. I mean, especially if you're really into .NET. I think it's interesting anyway, like looking at the differences between implementing something with WinForms and GTK Sharp, for example. And they do go into GTK Sharp a little bit with this article.
Now, what's GTK Sharp for us non-Linux people?
Okay, GTK is this graphics toolkit that is... one of the more popular for various Linux operating systems. I'm pretty sure that it was developed side by side with and for the GIMP, which is the open source Photoshop alternative. And it's not, at least on Windows, it's not the hottest toolkit. It really doesn't jive too well with Windows, but you're going to find a lot of Linux applications written against GTK. And so when it comes time to talk desktop applications on Linux, you're going to be talking about GTK. A couple other really popular toolkits are Qt and WX Windows, and that's a whole different story. But the deal is there's like a whole slew of these things, and GTK is one of the more popular ones. So they walk you through a little bit of how to develop a very, very simple GTK Sharp mono application, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool to look at how it's done. There's no designer yet, so you're back to doing everything manually, but it is interesting. And the URL for that is http:// Technica, which is arstechnia.com/etc/linux/index.html. And I would recommend that just to get some perspective, just to take a look around and see how other people are having to do things with .NET.
Okay. Cool.
And that is really pretty much it. That is the news. That and the paper cut and the dog piddling on me.
Okay.
The one last thing that happened this week that might fit in the news is that my dog has matured to the point that he asserted his dominance over me yesterday by attempting to impregnate my arm, which was kind of gross.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that's the news.
Now obey.
That tune right there came from an old record that I had in the 70s. That's why the scratches are on that. Actually, that's a lie. It's just a plug-in.
Wait, real quick, for anybody who's still listening live, there is an IRC channel. If you get your IRC client out and go to chat.fnet.info and then join the Sharp, .NET Rocks channel, the .NET Rocks channel, there's like 6 or 7 people in there right now.
Okay, good.
Just letting people know. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's time to introduce our guest, Clemens Vasters. And Clemens has more than 14 years of experience as a developer and software architect. Roy, I got to ask you, are you as excited as I am? I mean, this is something that I usually ask Mark, and Mark would say, man, I am excited. But this is going to be an exciting show, don't you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I'm pumped. I mean, what do you want me to say? Of course I'm pumped.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you expect me to say? No?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I expect you to say yes.
Of course I'm excited.
This is going to be fun. Well, Clemens Vasters has more than 14 years of experience as a developer and software architect for financial solutions for the banking industry, portal solutions, and application infrastructure services. He frequently speaks at major local and international conferences throughout Europe and in the U.S., such as Microsoft Tech Ed, events in the U.S., Europe, and Asia, and many other events. All in all, over 45 events in 26 countries in 2004 to date. Wow, that's a lot. Clemens is the author of several books and writes for the Pound Talk series in the German .NET Pro magazine. He is also the original author of the widely used weblog software called Das Blog, contributed as the lead architect to the Microsoft New Intelligence Research Project, Fabric, F-A-B-R-I-Q, all caps, and is lead architect and developer for the Microsoft SOA sample application, Prosware, which is going to be published later this year. And last but not least, he is one of the Microsoft regional directors in Germany. Will you please welcome the one, the only, Clemens Vasters. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Guten Morgen. That would be hello in German. Because
okay.
you get me out of bed for this show very early. So I'm in a very grumpy state. You will feel the revenge, my friend.
I see. I'm shuddering.
Carl, I was excited a couple minutes ago, but now I'm
scared. Good Lord. No, anyway, so I know it's a little early, and thank you for getting up and being with us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so when we were talking earlier, you said you were going to rock the world on .NET Rocks tonight.
Well, we're going to see how that works. I'm going to try to make much less statements about Microsoft products than on the show than the people I heard on other shows.
Okay.
So I'll try to make it adjusted to the time zone that I'm currently in, and not make too much of a use this product and it's going to make the world a better place, etc. But I'm gonna stay a little more mellow.
Okay. Because, we have done quite a few shows recently on the SOA and web services and all that kind of stuff. And when you said you wanted to talk a little bit, in that genre, I got a little nervous because, we had done these couple of shows, 3 or 4 shows in a row, that were sort of SOA sort of things. And I had you go and listen to them, and you said, yeah, no problem. I'm not even going to go there. So where should we start? I guess, what I want to start talking about before we even get into what you're going to say here is a little bit of Clemens' history, and in particular Das Blog.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did that come about?
Last year, I started blogging late 2002, and I used Userland's radio.
Right.
And then sort of in spring last year, I found that to be very limiting.
Okay.
To say the least. It was just not very reliable, and the posting was sometimes worked, sometimes didn't, and even though it's a local app, it's browser based and has this local server, and even that doesn't really work well. And then once you go and then replicate stuff out to their website, that didn't really work well. And then Userland just put out one version, and then they really never updated it. And I wanted to have more control, so I looked at BlogX from Chris Anderson, and thought, that needs a little improvement. And then I wanted to keep my radio templates, so I needed to have a little bit more of a templating language. And then I decided to write a clone of their templating system for ASP.NET.
And had you used .text too?
.text and my stuff were basically developed at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So Scott and I basically developed this stuff at the same time, and Scott only put out his source code like 3 months or 2 months after I published mine.
Okay.
And until then, it was sort of still, he had his stuff still very secret, and then sort of he came out with his stuff, so so that wasn't an option. But it was really, so I wrote that software just for myself and then I'm really keen on getting better stats.
Right.
To see what's happening. And so there's two things that DasBlog has to focus on in terms of functionality, and that's track as many statistics as you can get, and the second is be as flexible as possible in terms of rendering. And that's the two things that I did.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I want to make this an application that has, the one or the other interesting sort of technical aspect to it. So I do a lot of asynchronous processing in the background just to show, and that's because I use DasBlog as a tool in our workshops.
Okay.
As a tool to demonstrate things. There's a lot of asynchronous processing in the background. So whenever you post something, you can get you can send out notifications, you can send out pingbacks and trackbacks, and whenever you get a referral in, that is then queued up to be processed later. So I do a lot of everything I can do asynchronously on the background thread. I'm doing.
Oh, good.
So all these things are in there. Then I have all this time zone handling. How do you handle multiple time zones in Windows?
Yeah, that's always a problem.
Specifically in .NET, because .NET knows two time zones. It knows UTC and whatever time zone you're currently in. The rest is impossible.
Right.
So all that handling is there. So it's a combination of a tool for myself and
so when users log in, Clemens, they get to tell your system what time zone they're in.
I'm not taking it quite that far, but the user, well, it depends what the user is.
Well, the client,
the blog user,
the blog user,
the blog user can tell his time zone, and that time zone is the one that is shown under all the blog entries.
Okay.
So readers know exactly what time zone that stuff was posted from.
Yeah, that's good.
And you can take your time zone along with you. So if I'm on the road and I'm posting from, let's say, Pacific time, I can switch that, and then people see exactly the time that I posted that on. I adjust for daylight savings time and all those things.
Cool. Is the time zone that the user is in, is that one of the headers that goes through HTTP, the CGI interface?
No, you need to go into the configuration of the engine, because there's multiple channels you can post in. You can use the Blogger API and related APIs. So that's one channel. Then the second one is you can go through the website, and then the third is that you can go and just send an email to the engine into a POP3 account, and then the engine is going to pick up your text. It's going to resolve attachments. It's going to inline pictures, and it's going to do all that.
Yeah,
because there's so many input channels. I need to have a central place where I can manage that, and that will be config.
So when do you sleep? I mean, how does a guy like you speak at 45 events a year and write DasBlog at the same time? We write it on the road?
There are times for summer projects, and there's times for travel. So I've been on the roads pretty much almost every weekday since January until 3 weeks ago. And now we're entering summertime, and after TechEd Europe, we usually have a stretch of like 9 weeks, where there's no events going on. That's A, there's no Microsoft events or conferences, and then B, Germany basically shuts down for this time because people get 30 days of vacation. And the school holidays overlap in all those states, so Germany can pretty much forget for workshops during the summertime. So during that time, I get time to do a summer project. I have one going on right now, and DasBlog was last year's summer project. And then I can do fixes over time.
So you're going to rock the world. What is this great epiphany that you've had that you want to share with us?
Okay, it's a little difficult at first, and then it may get a little easier. Rory,
Yes, Clemens.
I'm going to send you 3 messages, my service. Rory, you are now a service. I have now declared you a service. I'm going to send you 3 messages, 3 requests, so to speak. And I would like you to answer. I would like you to answer me the replies or responses as quick as you can, and in no particular order.
Okay.
First question: square root of 673. Second.
What'd you say?
Prime factors of 72. Third, 3 plus 2.
That's how ZeepChat responded, too. What'd you say?
Well, I didn't even hear the first one.
First is square root of 673.
Okay.
Third is prime factors of 72. And third is 3 plus 2.
Okay. I guess 5, 9, 7, and whatever the answer is for the third one. Or for the first one, I should say.
Okay, thank you. You already made my point, because I don't even know what the answer is for the first one.
Okay.
And what is your point?
Okay, so I gave you 3 tasks to do. And for the last one, of course, you don't need a lot of time. For the first one, you should probably take a calculator, because it's a little hard to do in one's head. And then the prime factors, you were pretty quick. But 5 was the first answer. So you came back with, the order 3, 2, 1.
Mm-hmm.
I gave you 3 jobs. Now, if you were a program, a traditional program, you would have, bitten your nails
handled those sequentially
on the square root for a while. And then you would have thought about the prime factors, and then you would have come back with 5. Because you would be a sequential program which does request-response. However, in a services world, you just send messages. And that's what I did. I gave you 3 jobs. And then you come back in no particular order. What we just had was a dialogue sequence, a duplex message sequence. As it happens in the real world, that's much more common than what we do in programs. Once we get into a world of services, once we get into a world where software is autonomous things, then we're going to have much different communication patterns as the norm than we have today. So my point is that if we look at services or the whole web services story, and that's as far technology that I really want to go at this point, it sort of looks still as if this was all RPC. We do HTTP, and that's sort of request response. You go somewhere, and then you hang out for a little while until the other service has done its work, and then it comes back to you on the same thread and on the same communication channel, on the same socket, if you will. And I don't think that's necessarily right. I think we need to look at services in a little more liberal way, and we need to think about autonomy a little more. Are you confused enough already?
So are you just talking about asynchronous processing on the client, or are you talking about the order of operation on the server, or
all of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say, hey Carl.
Hey.
You have a big shop, right? You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trainers, and you're covering the entire world and all of this, and you're out for world domination. That's true, right?
Of course.
See? So are we. Well, on a small scale. Okay. So you have, all your training work to do, and then you have people who are doing sales, and they talk to people, and then they bring in jobs, and then they go and tell you about it, and then you, as the big man, start to schedule people, and you send them out, and all this happens how?
Yeah, certainly in not in any particular rigid, regimented order, that's for sure.
So it all happens through which medium?
On demand. Okay, through which medium? Through sound pressure waves.
Sound pressure waves?
Email,
and
sound
Outlook.
pressure, Outlook. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So let's say all this accounting stuff went totally overboard, and you had thousands of customers. Let's say you are not Franklin's Net, you are, a big corporation. A really big corporation.
Franco.
At some point, your MBAs find out, all these people who are trained in the East, find out, your East, not our East, find out that it would make sense to outsource, here's a horrible word, to outsource a business process to Pakistan. So all of your bills are processed in Pakistan, in Karachi, or in Bangalore, if you will.
You have very interesting example data here.
Yeah, I know.
Let's analyze this psychologically for a minute, shall we?
Yeah, okay.
No.
So you have your raw data, stuff that you charge, and there's everything that you shipped, and then you want to formalize this, you want to put it on the bill, you want to have it all verified, etc. Mm-hmm. And there's people who offer business process outsourcing.
Right.
So you give them that raw data, they'll work on it, and then they'll probably send stuff from there, or they print it remotely. They work on this. So
basically, what we're doing here is reacting to changes in the market and changes in the way that things can be done most efficiently. Right? Is this your point?
We're dealing with changes. We're dealing with the ability to outsource stuff.
Okay.
Which may be good, which may be bad, depending on how you look at it. What we're also dealing with is business process. See, so now I have everybody confused. So let's get things together.
Okay.
A customer calls you, or a customer sends you mail and says, "Hello, Carl, I'm interested in this and this." Let's say you don't sell training, which needs a lot of consulting right right up front, but they simply want to order something. Some product you offer.
Yeah, the .NET Rocks movie, for example.
Wonderful. That's a wonderful example. So they call in, or they fill out a form on the website, or by any communication channel, they come to you and say, "I want to have this." You take that order, which is a message, and then you pass that on to your credit card processing whatever service, because that's the first thing you want to validate.
Right.
The second thing is that you need to verify that customer is actually, has a plausible address or has plausible data. So you need to have that verified.
Right.
So credit card processing, of course, takes a little time. If you are a computer, then all that takes a little time.
Right.
And then they come back eventually with a message, and then you give this to your shipping department. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you write a proper bill or you execute that payment. There's a couple of steps there.
Right.
As it happens, this is all a workflow. If you look at any company, how it operates, especially those who are not fully automated yet, where this is still transparent, mm-hmm. What you really have in any business process is a folder with a bunch of paper, and that folder goes through several departments in that company. And that's how things are done. If the company communicates with the outside world, they send faxes. The fax is the number one business-to-business integration machine that we have.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Let alone, there's like BizTalk and whatever, and WebSphere MQ and all these wonderful business process integration products. And in reality, the business-to-business integration tool of choice for 99% of the world is the fax.
I bet all of us can think about, how much the fax is utilized in our own companies. And even with web orders, even with companies that take orders for things over the web, somewhere there's a fax machine involved. I swear to God, this is more common than people think.
Okay. So that is all one-way messaging. There's no request response involved. You either have a folder that runs through the company, and one person gets a job, does the job, writes the results on another piece of paper, and just hands it over, mm-hmm. and will not see that job again. The postboy comes into the room, delivers a stack of paper, you open that folder, you do your job, you put your results back into that folder, and just the postboy comes and picks it back up, and you will never see that job again. That's one-way messaging.
You're talking about one-way messaging as being the way things really work.
Correct.
Yeah.
The second thing is so we have one-way messaging for once. Then the second thing is you get a fax, and that fax is in order, and you go and answer as soon as you know whether you can execute that order with a purchase order confirmation. And again, you send a fax back, but you don't. The other person who's sending that purchase order will not be stupid enough to wait in front of his own fax,
right?
Just to stand there and stare at it until you're ready to.
I get it.
Right? That would be very stupid.
The difference between one-way messaging in the real world and one-way messaging in computers is, of course, context. And so when some folder, some XML document shows up at your doorstep, the obvious question is, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? What is this? What does this mean? What is it? Where does it fit? Where's the history for this? And it's something you can figure out by looking at a fax because, just one sentence in English, click, I know where that goes in the business process. But, for computers to figure that out, that was the first question I, had for you that is a big challenge. How do you deal with that?
This is why man invented the form.
Right. And, we'll get to that in a second. And the second one is, it also requires that clients have repositories, sort of like that clients can be servers as well, a sort of a peer-to-peer model.
Well,
whereas
we're going to get to that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you file your tax income return on just an arbitrary sheet of paper?
No.
See, and that's because the guy in the tax office needs to have some sort of a contract with you.
But you can send a fax that, if I wanted to order lunch from the restaurant down the street, I could send them a fax that says, hey, make me a grinder on an ordinary sheet of paper.
Yeah, that's
and
true
that
because there's still a contract in place between you and them.
Sure.
Because if you go and write a very literary explanation of all the great things you want to have in Shakespearean English, and
right.
the poor guy at the deli around the corner only speaks Spanish.
Right.
Well, in that case, that just won't work because
right.
you have a common contract. And the common contract is called English.
Yeah.
So there's always a contract in place for communication.
There's always a protocol.
Sometimes it's more formal. Sometimes it's less formal.
Right.
But if we look at how business is done with bigger corporations with larger volumes, even if you do use the fax, you usually use forms because that's the only way how people, if they need to read that stuff, if they need to key it into systems.
Right. If it's anything,
here we have
more
integration by clipboard or integration by data typists.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way how they can consume that data. If you just use an arbitrary sheet of paper, it just doesn't work. Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Good.
for anything more than ordering a grinder. Okay.
So if we have a completely people-based process,
mm-hmm.
which is where I was getting to.
Right.
And if we have nonlinear communication, which just goes back and forth, just as my initial example with Rory, where he came back with an out-of-sequence set of answers.
Right.
Then we have, first of all, people-to-people process using the fax machine. We have contracts in place. Correct?
Sure.
Good. So if you go to a company and say, so you walk up to Franklin's Bed, and I say, Carl, I would like to have, three slices of pizza with the following on it. What are you going to say to me?
Wait a minute. So if you come up to Franklin's Net and order a pizza, I'm going to say,
yeah.
No, you want the pizzeria down the street. I'm sorry. This is we don't sell pizza here.
That's true. I'm going to come to you and say, hey, Carl, teach me VB. And I would like to have that done. My developers are very busy, so I'd like to do this on the weekend, and I'm going to pay you $10 an hour.
Okay.
You'll say, "Thank you, I'm not really interested in that business."
Right.
There's certain rules and circumstances for doing business together. There's general terms and conditions. That's a policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk to you. I give you some information. I give you requests, stuff that you can fulfill, and there are certain limits to the things that you can do. There are certain services that you offer and services that you don't offer.
Right.
And there is a certain level of pain that you're willing to accept, and there's a certain level of pain that you're simply not accepting.
Right.
That's a framework that you operate in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a policy.
So we're talking one-way communication, we're talking contracts, and we're talking policies.
That's so. Are you feeling already feeling how you turn into a service, my friend?
I feel it. I feel the power. Put your hands on the screen, my friends.
That's so.
Very cool.
Okay. So we have contracts, and then of course I can come to you and I can say, Carl, teach me VB. No, sorry, teach my developers VB. I'm going to send them to you for 3 days, and when they come back, they're going to be the complete cracks in Visual Basic.net.
Okay.
And I can trust that. So I can send them to you, and when they come back, so the people are the message.
Right.
That's cruel, okay? But they are. They're actually the data in that message. So I sent those people to you, and you educate them, they come back. I can totally trust that you can do that. Because you're totally autonomous. I don't have to tell you what to do.
Right.
I don't have to instruct you along the way because you know really well how to teach developers. I don't have to give you any instructions about this.
So what about the other problem of having a phone to answer, actually? Because sometimes you have outgoing calls, you have incoming calls, and the service client, as it is now, is really an outgoing only kind of thing where, because of HTTP, it's connectionless, and you make a connection and you send a request and you wait for a response. You can, of course, do it asynchronously, but you're still just doing the same thing on another thread. So how can I just sit there and have a telephone that's going to ring when business needs to be requested?
Oh, because you have a phone that can ring. See,
yeah, okay, so in the service world.
Yeah, in the service world. See, when we look at services, when we look at web services, the word web totally gets in the way.
Right. I agree.
Because it has nothing to do with that. A service, so first off, let me just recap where we are.
Sure.
Services are based on contract. There are certain rules. There's a framework with policy, and they're autonomous. And sort of the unspoken thing that we have is there are explicit boundaries. The explicit boundaries are, you communicate over the phone. We are not the same person. So if there are two people, the explicit boundaries are pretty clear, probably except for certain situations. Right. But usually they are. And so I didn't really go into that. Now, that's the core of services. Services, and that's why I'm saying services and the web services, has very, very little to do with HTTP. So let's look at your. I'm sure you have a computer in front of you, yeah?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I know you have Instant Messenger open.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful communication channel that pushes stuff right to you.
Right. It also doesn't use port 80.
And it doesn't use port 80.
So it's not
do you have Outlook open by any chance?
I don't, no.
Yeah, but you could.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, you have something that you can pull stuff out of.
Right, because there's another well-known port that is
Correct.
Open on most firewalls.
So there's notification places. There's notification channels, how you can learn about stuff. So if you're a person and I'm sending you a notification, I can say, I will pop a toast on your screen using, let's say, .NET Alerts.
I get
and
that.
Toast,
I mean, I understand that. I mean, I wrote a book on sockets programming, 2 of them actually. So
there you go.
I understand that. But I'm talking about from a logistical point of view. The reason web services are so great is because the port 80 is open on people's firewalls.
So
and the ports 25 and 110 for email are also open, but if you notice, there's a little problem we have called spam, and one of the biggest reasons we have spam is because those ports are open and because people can just willy-nilly sit. So we have like this built-in conflict of interest with TCP/IP that if the ports have to be open in order for you to receive a connection. And if the port is open, then you also have the problem where you've got unsolicited requests, basically in connections. You've got basically an army of people outside outside my door who don't care the least bit about VBNet training. They want to sell me screwdrivers.
That's true.
And they're going to use my forms. They're going to try to get into my service based on my rules and my policies, no matter what I set. So I guess this is what I'm saying is, the biggest reason that web services work so well and it is because of port 80.
The reason why the XML SOAP HTTP GUI works so well is because of port 80.
Right.
Again, this has very little to do with services at the core.
Right. So I guess what I hear you saying, if I can just try to figure it out, what I hear you saying then is, look, we have lots of different transports that are available now that we could attempt to use to receive, to find a repository. And we also have just raw TCP if you want to open up a new port, for example.
Yeah.
So one of those is going to work for you, you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. And if I send you a message, if I send you a job, whatever job that is, that shall reach you to do something, that doesn't mean that doesn't say that I need to push it right into your face.
That's true. That means you could be polling for it, in other words.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, all you need is sort of an inbox.
A landing place.
You need to have a landing place, and you can walk up to that place, and you can fetch jobs. And that's exactly what the real world does.
Right.
See, there's a stack of paper on your desk, and that's all the work you need to do.
That's how POP3 works, actually. POP3 doesn't just... It's not like people send email to you and your client is actually a server, that's listening and accepting. Your email client actually goes and polls your mail server on a regular interval. So
correct.
And
multi-part mail, multi-part my mail has the wonderful ability to mark certain blocks with text XML,
right,
or application/SOAP plus XML.
Right.
And so you can use that wonderfully as a transport. So services and how messages reach services, and we should agree that XML is a great way to express the content of those messages. Yeah. But really, the transport has very, very little to do with it.
Okay.
So if we take the real world as a model, and I think that's a very smart thing to do, because the real world works like this. Let's say let's exclude the fax machine here, but simply say we're sending letters. Works like this for the last couple hundred years. See, the business processes that we're talking about, the foundations of those business processes that we're still looking at and still trying to find solutions for, are older than the United States of America. So there's a little to be learned from all that. And I think the industry is right now coming to terms with simplification around those ideas. We're getting back to the roots of where we came from, so to speak. And this is what services is all about.
That's cool.
So,
That's very cool.
If I can look at Rory as a math service, which I abused him in the very beginning, right?
Right.
I don't care how Rory is implemented.
Right. You just know that you have you want to fill out a form and send it to him and then walk away.
Yeah, Rory can figure it out all in his head. He can use a calculator.
Well, except for this square root thing, I couldn't figure that out in my head. Because I'm not like Stephen Hawking or anything, but I was able to do a couple other things.
See, so the
I can
square
do simple multiplication too, but yeah.
Wonderful. So for the square root thing, you could probably go and
I could
cheat.
hire somebody.
You could outsource it.
You could outsource it.
That's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
I could offshore it. Yeah,
You
I could have a
you
team of
certainly
people
do that.
doing square roots for me.
So
In
in that
Thailand.
case, and that's actually a wonderful example. I don't care what you do with it. I simply want to have a response. So if Rory says, square roots are totally over my head, but I have a buddy who will help me for minimum wage, that is perfectly okay.
Right.
So he can employ anybody or any number of buddies he wants.
Yep.
And that's the idea behind services. I don't care what happens behind the scenes, and it's not my job to give you instructions about this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
Cut.
very cool, Clemens. Very cool.
Cut. Now,
well, hold
listened
that thought
to a
right there,
recent show.
Clemens.
Huh?
Hold that thought right there, because we have to play some music and pay the bills. And
that is perfectly okay.
all right,
Go ahead.
hang out, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Stick around. Hey, Carl Franklin here, giving a shout out to my friends at Data Dynamics. We've talked a lot about Active Reports on this show, and this is no exception. So I'm talking about ActiveReports.net. This is a port of their popular Active Reports program. If you're currently thinking of doing reporting in .net for Windows Forms or web applications, check out Active Reports for .net. Many of my friends in the business use and swear by ActiveReports.net. I use it as well. Let me just tell you, to say that the reporting is simple does it an injustice, because it makes you think that it can only do simple things. It can do very powerful things, but you don't have to go through hoops just to set up a simple report. When you create a report, the report exists with your application, okay? It doesn't exist on a server somewhere. All right, we're not talking about enterprise reporting. We're talking about, I have some data, I want to print it out, or I want to show it to the user. PDF format is supported, HTML format is supported. All the great features you'd expect from a reporting engine, drop dead simple, and the best part, it's not going to break the bank. They have a great licensing scheme that's easy to deal with. So check it out at www.datadynamics.com. Now let's get back to our show.
didn't get a message, didn't find a wanted note. You came the way you entered, silent through the door. God, what I give for another minute more. And waiting and crawling and begging and beating your door. And your door. And your
Oh, you're hungry? Oh, I'm sorry, man. I know.
Well, I ain't got a nickel to my name, but I'll offer you a cigarette just the same. I crawled out of the ashes just this morning at 4. I went back for my lighter, but they locked the door. We got every kind of novelty right here on the shore. Let me sing you the new London blues. When you come here, don't forget the secret theater. Just when you thought the shit could get no weirder, grab a bowl of beans and don't forget to wipe. We got Thai and Japanese here, but there ain't no tribe. Jimmy's down on Bank Street, he'll be wailing all night, just appealing the new London blues. Get up on an airplane, or maybe take the fast train. Come and spend the whole Saturday. Take I-95, it's just an hour away. Well, I just got off the ferry from Long Island. Left at 3 this morning from the Highlands. Doctor said I'll be okay for a day or two. I take my medication, but I dropped the tube. I swear to God, I never even touched that dude. I was just digging the new London blues. Get up on an airplane, or maybe
God, that was so much fun. That song. Well. Anyway, now's the time in our show where we like to do a little segment we call the Google Weirdos.
Wieners.
Rory,
what
you got, man? What are the shouts outs?
All right. Well, it was a slow weirdos week too, in addition to it being a slow news week. But I'll give you what I got. But first, I want to say, hearing that I searched the entire web, it's really weird because it suddenly brought me back to the night in New London when it was like 3:00 in the morning or whenever it was that we were doing that. Just funny memory. Anyway, so the shouts outs this week. The first one is Rory written on a shirt, which isn't really a shouts outs, but I picked it because, as I found out in a little email communication stuff this week, you made a Google Weirdo shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
Which pretty much tripped me out, because I didn't know about it. All of a sudden, there's this shirt with my ugly mug on it, and it says Google Weirdo on the back. So there's a Google Weirdo shirt.
What it was I was chatting with Chris
cool.
Sells, and Chris said, "So what does it take for me to get some swag?" He says, "Do I have to be a host twice?" It's like, come on, give me a break. So I said, well, what do you want? He says what he really wanted was a shirt with Rory's picture on it and some sort of reference to Google Weirdo. So I said, okay, I'll make you one. And it's a picture of you in like an Uncle Sam I want you pose or something. And
it's my serious business look. It's my
right.
I'll write your enterprise application, no problem. Look.
Yeah, except you looked like you had just gone 20 rounds with an elephant or something. Your eyes were bloodshot and must have been a horrible night before. But on the back it says, I'm a Google Weirdo. And that's up at www.cafepress.com/.netrocks.
Yeah, cool. So Chris originated the using keyword in C# and the Google Weirdos t-shirt. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's the story behind that. So the next shouts outs is Rory Blythe. I play PC games at work. That's kind of cool, sort of like the confessional booth kind of thing going on there. The next one is, hey, Rory Osharov got an MVP. Now you're both invited. So that's pretty good. Actually, I have some doubts about my getting invited back to the next one. Yeah. So the next one is Rory Blythe. I'm on your website. Hi, Carl. So you see, I think that one last week where the person gave a shout out to you, Carl, started a trend of Carl shouts outs. And this proves it, because here's the next one. Dear Carl Franklin, this is a doctor for Rory Blythe. Please give me a call. You seem to be very angry lately with all the profanity you use. I think I can help get myself a new yacht and some more gold to eat for breakfast.
What? Wait a minute.
Hey, I don't know. People just put stuff in Google. I don't know what it means.
Can you read that again? Because I was really trying to listen and understand it. I really couldn't. Is it as incoherent as that sounded? Sure. Or
yes, it was not a problem with my diction or the way I read it or my intonation. No, it was simply a matter of
my ear,
the word order.
Okay.
No, your ear's fine. It just made no sense.
Okay.
So the next one is shout out to Carl Franklin. I'm starting to get sick of it, because it's my shouts outs. This is my thing, man.
It's your blog.
And the next one is shout out to Carl Franklin since he has never gotten one. Yeah, because he's gotten like 5 in the past 2 minutes, Yeah. Nobody shouts outs to Rory anymore. Yeah. I feel pretty good. I'm on the antidepressant, so I'm pretty happy about it.
When all else fails, go to Prozac.
Everybody hates me. I'm okay.
Hey.
How are you? So those are the shouts outs. So we're going to get to the Google Weirdos, which are short this week, but there's a really good one last.
Okay.
So the first one is gross feces booger. That's sort of like a general kind of all-purpose depravity search.
I got to say something. When I was chatting with Chris Sells last night, he says, .NET Rocks has really gotten very vulgar lately. Is it me or is it...
Lately?
Yeah, and I said, you haven't listened to any of the old shows, have you? Apparently he hadn't. He had, but we hadn't always been so bad. But he says, yeah, it's... I don't know. He doesn't like it all that much. And then he was watching the movie, and a couple of things came up that he commented on again from his high moral ground. And then another sign came up, which was just as vulgar, but this time he said, that one made me laugh. So I'm like, come on, make up your mind. Is it funny or is it vulgar? I mean,
Yeah.
But that one was
he's got a point. I'm trying to keep it to an absolute minimum, but I threw that one in there anyway just for kicks. That's mainly because I had so few weirdos.
Really gross. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I agree. That's why it's in there.
Yeah.
So the next one is facial stabbing alarm, which is like a new interesting way to wake up in the morning. You're unlikely to hit that snooze button when your eyeball's stuck on a knife somewhere, right? Nah, you're up. You're blind in one eye, but you're up. Yeah, so the facial stabbing alarm, that's pretty cool. The next one, and I don't know how this wound up at my blog. I honestly don't see what the connection is, but it's just, is someone's ego too big? I don't know how that got to me. So,
well, gee, I don't
that's
know.
really weird.
It doesn't make any sense, really.
And so the last one, and I like this one. This one's really cool. This is one of those really long, intricate ones. It's pretty damn good. It's, Mr. Google, does the U.S. Space Shuttle run Windows or Linux? I want to build my own, and I want to know what to use. It has to be fairly stable because my dog is going to be the pilot. Does Linux let you play a CD-ROM? Because I want to play some music for him in the cockpit. My mom's boyfriend, Scott, says that Microsoft can't go on a spacecraft because it has bugs. Is this true?
That's all a Google. That's a Google search.
That was one search, and it's probably the longest search I've ever seen.
That is insane, man. Just like you. Thanks.
Wieners, wieners. 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 Wieners,
You just let me know when your Chihuahua starts talking like Peter Lorre, okay?
Hey, Rory, I'd just like to butt in real quick and say I typed "is someone's ego too big" into Google right now, and you're the first result. So that's all.
That's incredible.
Wow. That's that's like a big cosmic joke, isn't it? All right, so let's get back to the interview.
So, Clemens, are you out there? You were just about to wrap up your discussion on
philosophy. I was about to wrap up the philosophy portion,
right?
And now we're getting to the technical consequences of this.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So I'll just continue with my monologue here.
Sure.
Sort of. Okay.
We'll try to keep Arthur awake.
Exactly, because otherwise it would start snoring. I already had to, push myself up with another coffee here. So we have services, and I sort of explained and think we have an agreement what services are.
Okay.
There's a couple of technical consequences here. First of all, because let's stick with the Rory example, because I don't care how Rory is implemented. And Rory can answer me back, and I will understand, hopefully, his correct answers, and I will totally trust him that he's going to give me the right ones. I can give him the answers in any format I like, as long as he understands them, right? I can type in an IM, or I can send him a mail, or I can tell him on the phone. There's multiple channels I can reach him, but he will just do all the math for me, and I don't have to worry about it, and I don't have to do the math myself. And if he wants to outsource square roots, that's perfectly okay with me.
Yeah.
From that perspective, me as the consumer of that service, if Rory decides to reconfigure and become better at square roots and says he wants to internalize that job and make more money of me, save the money that he loses through outsourcing, he's just getting better at his own stuff, well, then he can do that, and I won't realize it. Therefore, implementing services is a tactical thing. It is something that you do with whatever tool is best right now for the job. I listened to one of the earlier shows, and someone said, "Oh, well, you should not use Wizzy because, Indigo is going to roll all over it." And I say, can't agree with that. Because if you want to build a service right now, use it. Just go right ahead.
Right.
Use whatever shipping technology you have. There's no need in almost no program to sit around and wait for the next generation technology, because in our reality, it's going to take a while. And not just because Indigo is going to be shipping only, if we're lucky, towards the end of next year. and I didn't say I know any dates. That was just pure speculation. But really, whatever tool is good now is good now. There's a service. The service implementation is something you do because you know that you're going to evolve your program. You do services because you know that there's going to be change. What you want to do when you build a service-oriented system is you want to slice it into pieces, into autonomous pieces that you can evolve totally independently. If you write a service today and you deploy that service on Windows Server 2003 or whatever platform, and that box runs for the next 4 years and just happily does its job, serving, accepting messages and serving back messages, you can pretty much forget about the box. And that's exactly how things should be.
Yeah.
So you should slice your systems in a way that they just work. I know they need to be managed. I know there's an operations side to it. Yes, and you can follow standards. You can tie your stuff into the simplest stuff, the performance monitors and event logging, or you can expose stuff to WMI, etc. But once you have done all this, once you make your service ops friendly, so you can see what the status is as the people as a person behind the console, just leave it running. So the whole idea about services, about autonomy, about contract is to write pieces of software where you can decide at any point in time to replace them or just to leave them running.
Yeah.
That comes along with what I think is stupid about IT strategy, because people say, you have a shop of 300,000 people, and you are, I don't know, a huge multinational corporation. There are not so many of those. Let's say you have a shop of 50,000 people, like small to medium-sized shops, so like Microsoft size. And the CTO of that shop, let that be an insurance or bank, says, our future strategy is Microsoft.net.
Right.
Or our future strategy is WebSphere. And now they're scrambling and they say, okay, now we have an IT strategy. Now all of our applications must be written in that platform. All external programs we acquire must be supporting that platform. And I think that's just wrong. I think that doesn't make sense. Because if you have a tool that does its job and it doesn't matter what platform that runs on, let's use it. Right. The only thing it needs to do is it needs to talk to me in a way that I can support, and that is services. That is SOAP. That is SOAP through any transport. Now, there's a different story to what tools I prefer and how I think my developers are more productive. And on that side, it depends on what your developers are trained in, what they're used to. It may be Java, it may be .NET. It all depends. But really, from the services aspect, it doesn't matter what platform things run on. So you can even make me believe that I'm talking to Rory, but it's not really Rory answering the questions or Carl. Do I care? No.
Okay.
So on the technology front, if you use Wizzy today, if you use Asimex today, if you use the SOAP toolkit, if you use any of the Java stacks, that is perfectly okay. Because all these things are tactical decisions. Web service implementation is a tactical field. Using web services, the strategy, the contracts, the policies you put in place, the overall architecture is strategic.
Right.
All the bits, all the concrete bits are tactical elements.
Are you must be a big, but let me ask you this anyway. Are you a big fan of just creating web services that take a single argument, just a big XML document?
Oh, I think
instead of lots of little arguments or classes or whatever.
I think arguments is not the right term to use.
Yeah, inputs.
And that's where it starts.
Or messages.
Messages, inputs.
I think we should think there's ports, there's operations, and there's data. You send in data, and you instruct a service to perform a certain operation with that data. I don't think there's something. I think the term web method is as wrong as it can be.
Okay, so just answer the question, Clemens. So
yes,
yeah,
you have an input.
You know what
message.
I mean. So if you're writing an ASMX and you're making a public
message,
yeah. So if you're writing an ASMX and you're making a function in C# or a sub in C#, one parameter. Yeah, that's
the structure.
Yeah,
it's not if you have one parameter and that's an int, that's wrong.
Right.
If you only want to send an int, make a structure, contain the int in the structure. You know why? If you ever decide to pass more than just the int,
right,
passing the structure will be compatible.
Right. Yeah.
If you just pass the int, you need to say, comma next parameter, and all of a sudden you break clients.
Yeah.
With the structure, that's not the case.
Right.
Not on the programming model level, and not on the wire level. See, prosware.
Well, yeah, but if the implementation is expecting something more than the int, though, and it doesn't get passed in, I mean, obviously this is going to be on like a case by case basis, but isn't something still going to break? Isn't the server still going to kick back and say, "I'm sorry, but your message was not properly formatted. We're expecting a little bit more than an int"?
Well, if you start designing messages like this, you will expect that you're going to have a V1 client which talks to you, the V2 server. Because, so in V1 you say, I only need an int for this particular operation. In V2 you say, I need to have an int and a string as an additional parameter. Now you still want to.
So you put the version. You put the version in the message. Then you put the version in the message.
The V1 client doesn't know about versioning at all, probably. So
then if the message comes through and it's just that int, then the server just automatically assumes that it's a V1 client.
No, there's just a default assumption for that missing string. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Because XML is great in that if you omit stuff, it sort of comes, and XML serialization, it just comes out as null or default. So as you evolve a system, if you expect more data, and you want to support the exact same operation, that data is becoming optional. Or and that's what you just suggested.
That's really what I was wondering about. Yeah.
So you can evolve things much easier if you use structures. So in Prosware, that big SOA app that I've written for Microsoft, which they're going to publish hopefully soon.
Right.
It's written exactly like this. There's request response methods which have one return value and one input parameter. There's one-way messages which have avoid nothing return type. There's subs in terms of VB, and just one input parameter, and all of these are structs. And all of these are structs where you can simply add stuff as you go, as you evolve your system. And the job of the server is to deal with those extra additional parameters.
Right. And how does that work in terms of data typing? Specifically in an ASMX thing, where you've got the structure is defined at the server side. Right, and so that data type comes through to the client, and if the client doesn't have, the latest contract, isn't that going to break?
No, because it's you define a structure and you can only add to that structure. Now the XML serializer from .NET is very, very liberal, anyways. It just does it the right way. It'll find the appropriate field for a certain element.
Okay.
It is not very true to schema, like to sequences and schemas, etc.
Okay.
So it'll figure stuff out. But usually, what you do is in the schema, you have an extension point at the very end, where you say, we can do all of these things, and then there's any. So you have an extension point right there. And as you evolve stuff, you simply add more fields.
Sure. And as long as you don't mix them up in the
exactly. As long as you evolve and add stuff, you're okay.
Yeah.
Once you need to make more dramatic changes, like you really need to change the structure around, or you need to drop fields, well, then you need to make a decision of whether that's still the same contract. And I would say it's not.
Right.
If you make semantic changes to a method, then or to an operation, that is likely a new operation. It's not the same thing. Because if you break the behavior, you're going to break clients that make assumptions about the behavior. In a services world that we're getting into, so the software, the client software, is not beyond your control. Even if you're sitting within a large organization, you can't evolve the clients along with the server software, and that's exactly one of the problems that we have.
Yeah.
Writing big apps, writing big connected systems is really hard right now, because once you make a change, in the far end corner of that data center, you need to distribute all the proxies and all the binary stuff and et cetera and all this, and at some point this just gets beyond control. You can't do that. It's just too hard.
Tell me some more about this sample application that you're writing.
Yeah.
For Microsoft. When is this going to ship, and with what?
So the application is basically done.
Okay.
There's still discussion around the proper delivery channel and the education around it. Mm-hmm. I've done a talk about it at Tech at Europe. And
it includes a server and multiple clients?
Okay, it's an application, and thank you for asking this. It's a bookstore.
Okay.
It's yet another bookstore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was just low-hanging fruit in terms of business case.
Sure.
It consists, the shipping version consists of, I believe, 7 services, mm-hmm. 7 independent pieces, and 5 databases. And these things are all interconnected, and they execute a ordering business process. 5, listen again,
yeah.
5 SQL Server databases.
I hear you.
And why is that so?
That is interesting, yes. So 5 physical machines or 5 logical data? You're talking about physical machines.
You can distribute this app any way you want.
Right.
There's basically it's a 3.5 at this point. The way I gave it to Microsoft, and I can't give you dates. I can't give you the delivery channel, sure. because that's still being figured out. I gave it to Microsoft as a 3.5 meg MSI file. You unpack this. You check an option for build after install. It'll fire up Visual Studio, and it's going to build for half an hour. What you're going to get out of this is it's going to expand into like a 50 meg directory, and it is going to install 5 databases in the process.
Okay.
And all those. So, and what it also gives you is 7 MSI files, and those MSI files are the services in deployment mode, lockdown hardened mode, that will install in Active Directory, service accounts, and all those things, and grant permissions, and also set up their own databases. You can distribute that app in any way, shape, or form you want, and then you can wire it up using modifying config. Now, the reason why I have 5 databases is stuff is autonomous. The customer database, or the catalog database, or the pending orders database is nobody's business but the respective services business. There's no way anybody may touch any columns, any rows, anything, except through the public interface of the responsible service. If we do all this loose coupling, peace, love, XML stuff, and in the end, we're stupid enough to tight couple at the back, right. to tight couple on the database, if we're stupid enough to allow that someone from a service called Invoice runs a join over a table customer, then we can simply forget about the whole services idea from the get-go. Service with service, to make that real, we need to forget about that big, huge wallpaper, which is the one data model. That no longer exists. If you have a database which has 500 tables and you want to stick to that, just don't use services. It's pointless.
It's a real different way to think about programming, isn't it? I mean, this is
that's why this is such a huge deal, and this is why we really have a huge job ahead of us, getting this into our head as people who learn, and then for me as educators to get that into people's heads, because it is a different way of looking at architecture in a big way.
Yeah.
So people get puzzled around about the whole story about data. Oh my God, I can't do any joins across multiple tables. What am I going to do? How do I do reports? And that's true. How do you do data mining on all this? And the answer is consolidate into read-only replicas. Consolidate the stuff into a database that has all the essence, the summary of that data,
right,
and then run reports from there.
At the risk of sounding like the stupid one here, how is all of this better?
How's all of this better?
Yeah,
See, right now we're writing software which lasts for 3 years, and then it's such a convoluted mess that we need to throw it away. And we can't.
But how many people, how many developers, and how many teams out there are really going to be able to pull it off? That one autonomous piece of a particular system is going to, survive the other pieces as they're modified independently. Is the payoff and the reward really going to be there? I mean, maybe I haven't worked on this team yet, but a lot of the corporate development that I've encountered, the level of expertise required in order to make sure that all the pieces continue to function autonomously and not just totally throw everything into this hairy-carry mess just isn't there.
Okay.
So where is this going? I mean, who is this meant for? I guess is my question, because it doesn't sound to me like it's meant for your average corporate development team.
Okay, A, it should be. B, it requires military discipline. C, there's too few architects out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you are, and here we are, and we're getting to the point where the industry needs to grow up in a big way. If you are building a car, you have people who are engineers who are developing that car, or doing the engineering around the car, who are the designers and the architect of that car. None of these guys built that car. We are still far, far away from the maturity of manufacturing. We need to standardize stuff, and we need to have more discipline. We're in the state of like 1880, if that's good, in this industry. There's got to be a stricter rule. There's got to be more discipline around all these processes, around the whole development stuff. And so, is that a skill problem? I don't think so. I think the technology is here. I think we can do that. The skill problem is not with the developers. I think the skill problem is with the architects, because we're still sort of look at all the discussions and all the forums about what's the right architecture.
I'm trying to envision.
That's the stuff we still need to figure out.
I'm trying to envision, Clemens, an architecture as you're talking here of, some of the things that I've done and how, I'm just lost in daydream here, and, seeing the whole big picture, I can see how much more of a pain to develop, of course, and the level of coordination between these services just is a position all itself. That's a person's job. It's going to have to be.
How difficult? Okay, how difficult is it to set up a production line at Daimler Chrysler for the new E-Class?
Yeah, I hear you.
This has nothing to do with building the actual thing.
Right.
And if they tell you they invest $5 billion in the new model, they haven't built a single one yet.
Right.
See, that's the difference. The difference. I think to be
so
effective,
the problem there, of course, is that you've got millions of managers and development lead, project lead managers and things out there who just don't get that and who are bottom line driven.
Why I'm talking about it.
Well, but it all comes down to money, right? They do what they know. They don't know any of this stuff. They don't have. It's a huge leap of faith to take to spend the money and spend the time in architecture. Whereas, in companies, and I know Joe is nodding his head over here, in companies like that I've seen and that I've worked with and consultants and stuff, just convincing them to come to a training class for a week is just like pulling teeth. Convincing them to spend any time on a spec at all is sometimes like pulling teeth. No, let alone, it's like just do it.
A spec that can grow and be maintained over the years and be coordinated and implemented properly by a team of people who, kind of like me, don't even have college degrees. So it sounds to me like this. Yeah. It sounds to me like a problem that actually goes much further than just the developers today, right? It sounds like this is a sort of system that if you want it to work, you're going to have to get into the universities and you're going to have to drill it into the curriculum, and you're going to have to make sure that people are kind of produced with this mindset and this understanding of how to do it. I mean, it's going to have to go from computer science as this loosely knit collection of just sort of cool ideas about, different kinds of math or how to, implement a compiler to, well, we really are going to be engineers now. And not just engineers in a sort of self-congratulatory, we build things, so let's call ourselves engineers kind of way, but I mean engineers where the job is very, where the job is very, linear to a certain extent, where you say, this is how I do this. I'm not just going to jump in with my guns blazing and make up the process each time I start a new project.
Right.
And it's almost like you have. Well, I was just going to say it sounds to me like this is going to be like a 10-year battle just to get things started,
It's totally inevitable. If we want to have if we don't want to be in the mess that everybody builds their own silo, their own island, but we want to get closer to a vision of something that Doug Purdy at TechEd in San Diego called "There's only one program, and we're still building it." So if systems shall grow together, and if you want to build reusable pieces in the way that, to use that analogy, you don't have if you have a new business process, you don't fire your entire staff and hire everybody new. And that's what we sort of do when we write programs today. There's people who will not do, if you invent a new business process, their work will not change at all. You have people who will see minor adjustments to that job. We will have people who would totally lose their job but can be rehired for a different job. If you change a business process,
because they become engineers in the same sense that an electrical engineer is not expecting electricity to change from job to job. An electrical engineer is expecting to work with certain laws and properties that are constant.
So here's the analogy that I'm using that I used for an article I wrote this week. Business software is like a chocolate factory. There's machinery, mixers, and all this stuff, and then there's chocolate, and that chocolate that flows. We have infrastructure, services, we have data that flows through it. And there's a certain process. See, stuff gets mixed, and stuff gets heated, and stuff gets put into molds and cooled, and all those things. So if you make all the Easter bunnies at Christmas, and if you make all the Santa Clauses at Easter, if you're a chocolate factory, you sort of work, anti-cyclic to the seasons. How much of that process changes? The molds change, and the packaging changes, and that's it. The rest just stays in place.
Weren't we having the same conversation? By the way, this is Joe jumping in. I've wrested the microphone from Carl. We've got him on the floor right now. Arthur has his hand over his mouth. He's not happy about it at all. But weren't we having the same conversation 10 years ago, 12 years ago about object-oriented programming? It was only going to be grasped by a few. It was way out there. It was academic. You had to be an architect to understand what was going on. And now the API of the next wave of Microsoft operating systems is going to be object-oriented. So, yeah, Rory, we may be talking about a very long battle. I've had about 12 months where I work of talking services, because the things that Clemens is talking about would be absolutely perfect where I am. We've got a bunch of different systems that are a tangled mess because they've tried to evolve together and it just doesn't work. But trying to get it in at the management level is difficult. But I think it was difficult 10 years ago to convince people that object-oriented programming was the way to go. And we're not going to lose that, by the way. I mean, we're still going to be object-oriented programming to a really nice API behind these services. So, yeah, I think it is going to be a long battle, but I think it's worth fighting.
Well, yeah, people, fear change and all that kind of stuff and the usual thing. But I think that comparing object-oriented programming to services-oriented architecture, or to services in general, I don't think it's really, I don't think there's a match there, because it's entirely different to talk about the tools that you're going to use to build a process and the process itself. Because it sounds to me like services are really about process, I mean, the message we've been getting, at least that I've been hearing for the past hour or so, is the transport doesn't matter, the implementation doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. All that matters is the message. So we're not actually talking so much about bits. We're not talking about ones and zeros, which is kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about object-oriented programming. We're talking about something much,
no, I don't
much,
think we are.
much
I think
different.
object-oriented was a level of abstraction well above bits. I think the people
Correct.
who were working with bits, when they looked at object-oriented, said, whoa, I want my bits back.
I didn't mean bits like literally as in bits. I meant bits in terms of where you're actually using the tools to manipulate the data and shift the data around and actually affect some sort of an outcome, basically the language. I see that as being pretty different.
But there's the important bit is when we went from structured programming to object-oriented programming, it was a major paradigm shift in many people's heads. Because
And that's
if you
what's
look
the
at,
same.
I have.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go and look at early builds, I mean, if you have access to them, and very few people have, very early builds of stuff like Olay, or very early examples of stuff like Olay.
Ouch.
So like the 1993 examples they have, they're written in C. So they built all the vtables themselves and all this stuff. So there's no C++, not even a trace of C++. These are all objects written in pure C.
It was really ugly.
And it looks horribly ugly, but it's object-oriented. These are all objects, without any doubt. You can roll your own inheritance in C if you want to. You can roll your own inheritance in assembly. The tool is just horribly inadequate for it.
Right.
And object orientation, people like the idea. There was a market, so there were languages, there were tools, and now that's mainstream. With services, we have horribly inadequate tooling right now because everything is just geared for object-oriented programming.
But the idea is good.
So the tooling is not good, but that's gonna be better. So Prosware, that app, is a little painful to write, and it turned out to be a little difficult. And frankly, the Microsoft people I'm working with were a little scared about the whole mass of source code I threw at them. And the thing is, you need to make those things that way because that's the way to implement services right now on this platform or any other platform. So the tooling is going to get better. We always try to solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's tools, and that's going to stay that way. But we're currently going through. I think it's a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift is really taking this stuff to the next higher level of abstraction. Object orientation was just as esoteric as services now.
And you know what? Kimberly Tripp sent us a message through the website. But she says, I have to admit, building a 500-table database, managing it, defragging it, keeping it available, and of course paying for the hardware to store it as a single entity is very difficult. I like the idea of, and forgive me, this is really not my area, services, as you can slowly build autonomous components on smaller, cheaper, and therefore more scalable hardware and components, and move this to this architecture over time. It also allows you to change pieces instead of having to rev a database and causing numerous problems. I guess I'm still learning, but I do like the idea. And hi, everyone.
And that comes from
Kimberly Tripp.
And that comes from someone who speaks very authoritatively about databases.
Yes.
And SQL Server.
She's the SQL guru.
So if Kim says, 500 tables are really hard to manage, I will believe that. And if she says, I love the idea that if there are only 20 tables, because that's much easier to handle on for a single instance, and then just look at a couple of databases instead, and that's easier to manage and easier to do. Well, then there's got to be a good point to it.
Yeah. Clemens, we're reaching the end of our time here, although this discussion seems like it's just beginning. I mean, you blew my mind here. So do you have any last-minute things that you want to tell people about or mention? Or
yes, one I have one thing.
Okay.
When you look at web services and you hear those tenets, explicit boundaries, policy, compatibility, contract, autonomy,
mm-hmm.
the most important one for me, which really defines service, is the autonomy one.
Right.
All the other three are about the edge. And the edge is very important because you need to get stuff in and out. But stuff is autonomous. A service has a life. You can look at it as a living being. It can wake up every 20 minutes and do stuff. It is not.
You've almost said the word shit 3 times, but you've caught yourself, and it's really okay.
Yeah. So it can do stuff. It can wake up at a given time. It can run its own threads. It's a living little entity that may yield messages to everybody at its own pleasure, and it may not accept a single message to drive it. So if you look at web services, it all seems like these are just components that get calls, and that's not right.
Yeah.
So think about autonomy. Autonomy is, for me, the most important of those tenets. Think about making things that have their own life, and I think that's the most important aspect of services that hasn't really caught on yet.
Cool. Well, stick around, Clemens, because we're going to do this segment, and we'll come back to you. We're going to do this segment every week. We like to do this thing with Richard Campbell, the toy boy, who's got some toys out there.
Speakers in my living room. NASA complains about the sonic boom. 10-foot high screen, 20 feet wide.
And Richard, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Guy, how you doing?
You got some good toys for us this week?
Well, I've been looking around because my friend Clemens is on, and I never known a guy who travels more than Clemens does, so I've been thinking travel toys a lot lately.
The travel smart clamp.
And I found yeah. Clemens probably missed that one, but I'll tell him about it later.
Thank God.
But, I've come to realize that you guys need a serious toy and you need a silly toy, so I'm going to leave the serious toy, and then don't worry, I have a very fine silly toy today, too. So our serious toy today is the Wi-Fi Seeker, www.wi-fi-seeker.com. Now, this is a little keychain fob that detects Wi-Fi networks. So when you're hanging around in the airport or you're wandering around the coffee shop and you need to find a wireless connection, this thing will help direct you to where the access point is so you can get the strongest signal
that's
possible.
Awesome.
Isn't this a great little gizmo?
How much is it?
It's about $30, but don't buy one.
No? Why?
No, because I'll guarantee you, in the next year, you're gonna get one in one of your swag bags with an MSDN logo on it.
Ah, but for now, it's a pretty freaking awesome cool toy, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you want to be the coolest guy on the block, you can go get one right away. Just let me know. So
I don't know if you'd be the coolest guy on the block, but you'd probably kind of be like one of the uncoolest guys, actually, if you have something like that. But I think I know what you mean.
You know what? That'll be a great contest thing to give away. Let's we'll give 5 of them away. So, but anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So that's very cool. Very simple toy too.
Very simple toy, but I think something that everybody who does any serious traveling and is starting to get into this idea that we have wireless everywhere, wireless in our coffee shops, wireless in our airports, this is the thing we need. We need to know how good is our signal without having to haul our laptops out so we can decide it's worthwhile.
It should be built right into the tablet PC, right? Should be.
One of these days, we're all going to have one of these things.
So what's the silly toy?
You ready for the silly toy?
Yeah.
Now, the only problem with this silly toy is that the link is appallingly bad, but let me walk you through how to get to this link the easy way. Okay? Are you ready?
Sure.
Because this is one of those things that really desperately needs to be seen more than it needs to be described.
Right.
So this is from those
I hope we
wonderful
don't get
people at
sued over this,
somethingawful.com.
Something
So
awful.
type in forums.somethingawful.com. Now, if you've never been to somethingawful.com, it's an interesting little place. We won't even talk about the picture on the front cover.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Go down
It's
to
on
the
my
main
link
category
bar.
under the general section.
General bullshit?
So click on the general section. That's right.
Okay.
Go to there. And then you'll have a list of threads.
Right.
Now, I'm going to pull the thread I want you to look at to the top, near the top, by clicking on the rating box.
Okay.
So if you click on the rating box, it's going to sort it by rating. And about the fifth one down, when you're sorted by rating, has a category code of flame. So click on that one.
We'll click on
And you're
rating
looking at-
first, in other words.
You
And
click
then-
on rating first,
yes.
so it'll sort it by rating. Fifth one down is called flame
Homegrown
grown
PVC flamethrower.
PVC flamethrower.
Now, first of all,
So,
Franklins.net
here's the
does not
story.
endorse anybody making or using a flamethrower
Holy
in
crap.
any way, shape, or form.
This is a 16-year-old boy who, with some help from his parents, built himself a portable flamethrower out of PVC, out of parts he got from Home Depot
Home Depot, right?
for less than $100.
Wow.
He's got copper piping for the actual flamethrower part. He used a ball valve at first to shut it off and on, which is kind of interesting because if you leave it open, it won't close. And a set of PVC pipe to store the gas under pressure.
too cool.
And then he just sort of wandered out in his cul-de-sac and shot a few 30-foot flames.
And there's some great photos and movies, actually, of him torching the hornet's
of
nest
this-
and stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, he went after some Ann Getty's toys first. And he said, by the way, Ann Getty's toys are not flameproof.
Oh, man. And those are like teddy bears and things, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So shortly after he posted this thing, a
Alcohol.
group of people told him he was going to die painfully if he didn't stop doing what he was doing. The main thing is, once the canister lost pressure, the flame would go back up the pipe and explode the canister. So
That actually
he got himself
happened?
a vacuum seal breaker and a few other bits and pieces to make it safe.
The only weird thing is that some of these
one of the
photos
best-
are on time-lapse photography, so they look a little blurry. But, oh, my God, look at that photo.
It's spectacular, isn't it?
It's 30 feet,
One of the
easy.
best comments I saw in the whole forum was this thing saying, I don't see why anybody's worried about this country being invaded.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, Richard. So, how are...
It's very American.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very American.
I don't know. That could... Oh, never mind.
Yeah, my flamethrower.
Richard, we're going to... No, go ahead.
I got a couple things I want to throw in there. One is that I'm doing some more research on some new toys here. And one of the things that is very near and dear to any serious road warrior's heart, and I know it is near and dear to Clemens' heart, is good laptop bags. And I've been doing some hardcore research on laptop bags lately. My good friend Ken Getz, a little shout out to him. He and I have been talking about it a lot because he's in the market for a new bag. Problem is, we've all got bigger laptops now and bags aren't keeping up. So I've got some ideas, but if you've got some ideas as well, feel free to send us a message. Actually, we have an email address just for toys. It's toyboy@franklins.net.
Franklins.net.
Franklins.net. Sorry,
Toyboy@franklins.net. That's it. And before we say goodbye, Richard, let's give away 5 of those little keychain Wi-Fi detectors. And but in order to do that, we have to give the listeners something to find so that they can email it to us. Something to find. What can the contest be?
There was a part that this lovely little man had to buy to make his flamethrower safer. And in addition to that basic part, there was a second component. Now, this component is talked about in the forums on...
Right.
Just checking the page number here. On page 12.
Was the component a
So if you
fire
can tell me-
department?
No. It was a call to the FBI.
Yeah.
Now,
So it's on page
there
12?
were two components necessary. One of them was a quick release valve. The other one is something else. And I want to know what the something else is. It's bold text. It's a very important part to making your own flamethrower a little bit safer.
Okay. And send your answers to .netrocks@franklins.net, and we'll take the first 5 right answers, and we'll send you all one of these wireless detectors. Make sure that you send us your snail mail address in the email or in another email, and go ahead and do that now. And while you're doing that, we're just going to play some lovely music and wait for your responses. It's pretty insane flamethrower, man. Jeff says, I know what it is. Do I get one? No. Back in the sound room. And we have some winners here. Winners 1 through 4. Scott Cowan, Wedgie Man, Terry Myers, and Dave Loeb. And we're waiting for the last winner, but that's okay. Somebody will figure it out. And, man, pretty good show. Clemens, it was great to have you on the show. And we'll keep an eye out on your blog for more information about this. And we'll have you back soon to talk some more about it. Sound good?
That sounds very good. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And on behalf of myself and Rory Blythe, Jeff Maciolik out there in the sound room, Clemens Vasters, and Joe Grenier and Arthur Gelli, who joined us in the studio today, I'd like to thank you for listening to .NET Rocks today. And tell a friend about our little show, and can't wait to show you the movie. Keep on rocking. Good night, everybody.